You know they say marriage is a marathon, not a sprint. Well, if that's the case, I must have missed a few water stations along the way, because I was feeling pretty dehydrated when I discovered that my wife, Emily, had been hydrating herself at various bars around town, with other men. But let's rewind a bit. Emily and I met at a farmer's market, of all places. She was haggling over the price of organic kale, and I was trying to figure out the difference between a zucchini and a cucumber. Still can't tell, to be honest. She laughed at my vegetable ignorance, and I was instantly smitten. We bonded over a shared love of bad puns and an inexplicable fondness for polka music. Fast forward 8 years, and we were the quintessential happy couple, or so I thought. Our life was a comfortable routine. We'd wake up, exchange the usual pleasantries over coffee, go to work, come home, binge-watch whatever was trending, and call it a night. Nothing too exciting, but I was content. That is, until I noticed Emily's sudden enthusiasm for girls' nights out. At first, I was thrilled she was reconnecting with friends. Self-care is important, I'd say, while settling in for a night of pizza and video games. But then the girls' nights became more frequent, and Emily started coming home later and later. One night, she stumbled in at 2 a.m., reeking of a scent that was decidedly masculine and definitely not mine. I joked that she smelled like she'd been wrestling lumberjacks, but she just shrugged it off and mumbled something about a new cologne the bartender was wearing. Red flags. Oh, they were there, waving enthusiastically like those inflatable tube men at car dealerships. But I chose to ignore them. Denial, after all, is the first step in pretending everything is fine. Then came the sock. One Saturday morning, I was doing laundry, a task I approached with the seriousness of a bomb disposal expert, when I found an unfamiliar sock in the hamper. It was a men's athletic sock, the kind I wouldn't be caught dead wearing. Unless I'd taken up sleep running, something was amiss. I held it up like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. "Hey, Em, is this yours?" I called out, half hoping she'd have a reasonable explanation. She peeked her head into the laundry room. "Oh, that? Must be yours," she said, a bit too quickly. "Pretty sure I'd remember buying neon green socks with stud Muffin written on them," I replied, raising an eyebrow. She laughed nervously. "Maybe it got mixed up with the neighbor's laundry. We live in a standalone house." "Right," I said slowly. "Maybe." That was the tipping point. I decided it was time to play Sherlock Holmes, not the Benedict Cumberbatch version. More like the Robert Downey Jr. one, with questionable methods but undeniable charm. I started by checking our shared calendar. Emily had been marking her girls' nights with little martini glass emojis. I cross-referenced those dates with our credit card statements. Sure enough, there were charges at places like the Tipsy Pelican and the Sassy Seahorse bars I'd never heard of, but sounded like they catered to a clientele who appreciated alliteration and bad decisions. Next, I casually brought up her friends in conversation. "How's Jessica doing? Still dating that guy with the unibrow?" I'd ask. She looked puzzled. "Jessica? Oh, she's good. We've been so busy, I haven't seen her much." Interesting, considering she'd supposedly been out with Jessica 2 nights ago. I needed more intel. Enter my best friend, Mark, the kind of guy who could charm secrets out of a sphinx. "Feel like grabbing a drink at the Sassy Seahorse tonight?" I asked him. He raised an eyebrow. "That's a dive bar on the other side of town. Since when do we go there?" "Since tonight," I said, grinning mischievously. That evening, we positioned ourselves in a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. The bar was a kitschy nautical nightmare, think fishnet decor and pirate-themed cocktails. After an hour of enduring sea shanties played on a loop, I was about to give up when Emily walked in, dressed to the nines. But she wasn't alone. She was with a tall, muscular guy wearing, wait for it, a neon green sock cap that said Stud Muffin. "Well, I'll be damned," Mark muttered. "Indeed," I sighed. They took a seat at the bar, laughing and leaning into each other like teenagers at a prom after party. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a strange relief. The truth was out, blatant and undeniable. "Want me to go over there and accidentally spill a drink on him?" Mark offered, his eyes flashing with protective rage. "Tempting," I said, "but no, I have a better idea." Over the next few days, I concocted a plan, a master stroke of revenge, that would make even the Count of Monte Cristo give a nod of approval. First, I needed access to Emily's phone. An opportunity presented itself when she asked me to update her apps because technology hates me. I obliged, but not before installing a little piece of software that synced her messages to my laptop. I know, privacy invasion and all that, but desperate times call for ethically questionable measures. Through her texts, I learned that Stud Muffin was actually Brad, a personal trainer who spelled your as and thought emojis were a valid form of punctuation. He wasn't the only one either. There was also Steve, a bartender with a penchant for sending shirtless selfies, and Tim, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur whose business seemed to involve pyramid schemes. I felt less threatened and more insulted by her taste. Now for the pièce de résistance. I created a fake online persona, Sophia, an attractive woman with a keen interest in fitness trainers who can't spell. Using carefully curated photos and just the right amount of flirtation, I hooked Brad faster than a catfish in a kiddie pool. Over a few days, Sophia and Brad developed a connection. He confessed that he was seeing someone, but it wasn't serious. Oh, Brad, you sweet summer child. I arranged for Sophia to meet Brad at a fancy restaurant downtown. Meanwhile, I scheduled a couple's dinner with Emily at the same place, same time. It was risky, but fortune favors the bold and those who've been wronged. The night arrived. Emily seemed genuinely excited for our date night, which only added to the surreal nature of the situation. We arrived at the restaurant, an upscale place with mood lighting and a menu that required a translator. As we were led to our table, I spotted Brad sitting alone, nervously checking his phone. Emily didn't notice; she was too busy complaining about the traffic. We ordered drinks, and I excused myself to the restroom. On my way, I passed Brad's table. "Brad, right?" I said, feigning surprise. He looked up, confused. "Yeah? Small world. I'm James. I think we've met before at the Sassy Seahorse?" He squinted. "Maybe. Mind if I join you for a minute?" Waiting for my wife to order for us, she has impeccable taste, I lied smoothly. "Sure," he said, still puzzled. I sat down. "So waiting for a date?" "Yeah," he said, glancing at his phone. "She should be here any minute." "Ah, blind date?" "Sort of, met online," he admitted. "Those can be unpredictable." I chuckled. "Hope she's worth the wait." Just then, Emily's voice called out behind me. "James, what are you doing?" I turned to see her standing there, eyes darting between Brad and me. "Emily, I was just catching up with Brad here. Do you two know each other?" I asked innocently. Her face went pale. Brad looked equally uncomfortable. "Wait, you're married?" "Yes, to this lovely woman," I said, standing up to put an arm around her. "Isn't life full of surprises?" Emily stammered something unintelligible, and Brad looked like he'd just realized he was the punchline of a bad joke. "Well, I'll leave you two to whatever this is," I said cheerfully, guiding Emily back to our table. She yanked her arm away once we were out of earshot. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "I was about to ask you the same thing," I replied calmly. "But perhaps over dinner I'm famished." We sat down, and before she could launch into whatever excuse she was formulating, the waiter arrived with our appetizers, a timely interruption. "Emily, let's not make a scene," I said quietly. After all, we wouldn't want to ruin everyone's evening. She glared at me but remained silent, picking at her salad like it was to blame for this predicament. "Look," I began. "I know about Brad, Steve, Tim, all of them." Her fork clattered onto the plate. "How did you—" "Does it matter?" I interrupted. "What matters is where we go from here." She looked down, the bravado draining from her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Which part? The cheating or getting caught?" She didn't answer. I sighed. "Emily, we've been drifting apart. I thought it was just a phase, but clearly you've been exploring other options." She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry, I should have told you how I was feeling." "Maybe," I conceded, "but you didn't, and here we are." The rest of the meal was a study in awkward silence. We parted ways when we got home. She retreated to the bedroom and I slept on the couch, contemplating my next move. Now you might think this was the climax of my revenge. But no, dear reader, the best was yet to come. The next morning, I told Emily that I needed some space to think and would be staying with Mark for a while. She nodded silently, guilt etched on her face. At Mark's place, I set up phase 2 of my plan. Remember those shirtless selfies and grammatically offensive texts? I compiled them into a little dossier. Not to blackmail her. I'm not that cruel, but to make a point. I scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney, one who specialized in cases like mine. He was a sharp-dressed man with a sharper wit, and he assured me that things would go smoothly, given the evidence. But legal proceedings were just a formality. My real masterpiece was a little something I called the exposé. Using my limited but sufficient tech skills, I created a website, nothing flashy, just a simple blog layout titled The Double Life of Emily. I posted anonymized accounts of our relationship, her infidelities, and the absurdity of it all. I included the ridiculous texts from her suitors, the neon green sock incident, and even the encounter at the restaurant. I wrote it with humor and a touch of sarcasm, painting a picture of a man who'd been duped, but was taking it in stride. I shared the link anonymously on social media platforms, Reddit included, under the guise of someone sharing a cautionary tale. The post gained traction faster than a cat video. People were sharing it, commenting, and some even speculated about who the mysterious Emily could be. Now I didn't use her real name, or any identifying details, so legally I was in the clear. But the small town we lived in had a knack for connecting dots that weren't even on the same page. Emily found out about the blog through a mutual friend. She called me in a fury. "How could you humiliate me like this?" she screamed into the phone. "Ah, so you do feel humiliated. Interesting," I replied coolly. "Take it down, this is slander." "Actually, it's anonymous and factual, but sure, if it bothers you that much." I didn't take it down. Over the next few days, the tension escalated. Emily's workplace got wind of the blog. Apparently, one of her co-workers is an avid Redditor. She faced awkward stares and hushed whispers. The pristine image she'd cultivated began to crumble. She confronted me again. This time, she was in tears. "Please, James, I'm begging you, I'll do anything." I paused. "Anything?" She nodded desperately. "Fine. Here's my proposal. We proceed with the divorce amicably. You agree to my terms regarding the division of assets, and in return, I'll remove the blog." She looked defeated. "Okay." We finalized the divorce without much hassle. I got the house. She didn't really want it anymore, and she moved into an apartment across town. True to my word, I took down the blog. But the internet is forever, and screenshots had already circulated. Her reputation was tarnished, but she had agreed to my terms. Now you might think I'm a heartless jerk, but consider this. I gave her an out. I could have dragged her through a messy public divorce, but I chose the path of least resistance for me at least. As for me, I took some time to rediscover myself. I joined a cooking class. Turns out, I can make a mean zucchini, or is it cucumber soup. I reconnected with old friends and even started dating again. Nothing serious. Just enjoying the company of people who appreciate honesty and can spell "your" correctly. One day while shopping at the farmer's market, I ran into Emily. She looked different, more subdued, like a deflated balloon. We exchanged polite greetings. "How have you been?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I'm managing," she said with a weak smile. "Good to hear." An awkward pause ensued. "Listen," she began. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." I nodded. "I appreciate that." "Do you think we could ever be friends?" she asked hesitantly. I considered it. Maybe in time, but for now I think it's best we go our separate ways. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Take care, James." "You too, Emily." As she walked away, I felt a strange mix of closure and liberation. The chapter was finally ending, and a new one was beginning. A few weeks later, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a neon green sock with "Stud Muffin" embroidered on it, and a note that read, "Figured you should have the pair. All the best, Brad." I burst out laughing. "Touché, Brad, touché." Life is funny sometimes. It throws you curveballs when you're expecting a straight pitch. But if there's one thing I've learned through this whole ordeal, it's that you can't control other people's actions, only your response to them. So here's to new beginnings, witty comebacks, and the occasional act of righteous vengeance served with a side of humor. And maybe, just maybe, I'll finally learn the difference between a zucchini and